What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Hangout. I am your host, BJ Kicks. I buy comics, I read them, then I review them, all for your viewing pleasure. This is the Hangout. This is the show we do every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about comics and whatever else I want to talk about because it's my show. So tonight we've got a very special guest. This is an interview that I've been wanting to do for a while, so I'm very excited that we've got this fellow on. Now, I won't bury the lead. It's right there in the title of the video. So we've got Jeff Thorne here. He's going to talk about his career as a writer for the screen, for animation, and of course for comics. We're going to talk about his Green Lantern run that just wrapped up. We're going to talk about Blood Syndicate because why wouldn't we talk about Blood Syndicate? And we're going to have a fun time while we do it. Now, before I bring Mr. Thorne to the stage, I do have to do some quick shout outs. YouTube superstar Torsten. Who's Torsten? I haven't heard of YouTube superstar Torsten, so I've got to look that person up, Bunkmaster B. But we got to pay the bills. So shout out to Organic Price Books, our channel sponsor. They are the best place to go online for collected editions. If you're like me and your single issues are just piling up, you might as well just buy the trade. You might as well just buy the omnibus. I just got the shipping notification for my Question by Denny O'Neil and Dennis Cowan omnibus. That'll be here Saturday. I'm excited about that. But Organic Price Books is having a summer sale. So there's a ton of books that you can get for an extra 14% off their already discounted prices. So for Nightfall Volume 2, I paid $43. Retails $100 on that book. So what did I say? 57%? Whatever. You can save a bunch of money. Go to organicpricebooks.com. Use the coupon code BJKicks Summer Sale to get an extra 14% off. We got a bunch of people here in the chat. James is here. Mentor Prizes is here. Nerdette's here. What's up, Nerdette? Or Tristan. My bad. So it's definitely good to see you. But anyway, I've held off long enough. I want to introduce you guys to today's guest, Mr. Geoffrey Thorne.
What's up, folks? Hello.
How's it going?
First of all, having me, brother. Absolutely.
No, thank you for joining. Thank you for being here. What's funny is you were loud before, and now you are not as much. So I'm going to turn you off a little bit.
That is my life.
All right, we're good now. Good.
The internet hates me.
Yeah, listen, man. Sometimes the universe just conspires.
You telling me?
So Bunkmaster B says, before we get too far into the show, huge grats to you, Kicks, for landing the new job and your first con as media. Grats on it. Yeah, it's a great weekend, or it should be. I just got to get these.
You got that press pass.
Yeah, I got a press pass for Heroes Con, which is exciting.
Nice.
But it'll be my first con, period. So that's also an interesting way to, have a first con experience.
Can a grown man tell another grown man that he's adorable in public? Because that's adorable.
So yeah, I mean, this is one of the things, right? So I was telling Jeffrey off screen that you guys all know this. I didn't start reading comics till 2019. My first con was supposed to be Oak City Comic Con in 2020, and Chris Claremont was the featured guest, and that got canceled. So this is the first con season since I started reading comics. So I'm excited.
You should enjoy it, man. Like, really, I don't know how big HeroCon is, but it's going to NYC or to SDCC. Those things are like going to Mecca. Like,
right.
What you want is a con that's really about comics. Where the creators are much more chill, the fans are less like, I don't know, like it just seems so aggressive and ornery at the giant conventions. And it may be just because there's more movie fans than there are comic book fans.
Right.
But this is probably a good one to start off. A mid-sized con is a good place to begin.
Yeah, I'm happy about it. They sent out the map and the schedule. It's not one of those things where you got to they've got like 2 to 3 concurrent panels running pretty much all day, but it's almost always a no-brainer as to which one you'd want to attend. Sure. The only thing I'm going to miss, I'm missing Sunday. And Sunday, they're doing the Chris Claremont and Weezy Simonson X-Men panel.
What?
And I'm like, why
Nice.
would they save that for Sunday? But
Yeah, why would? Well, you know what? To make sure you buy a 4-day ticket or a 2-day ticket, whatever,
probably.
right? You put some of the big stuff at the end, so that
Right.
you got to show up.
Right. So yeah, so I'm mad I'm missing that. But there's so many artists and writers that are gonna be there. I gotta pack a bag tonight of books that I want to get signed. So yeah, that's gonna be a fun balance. What I want to get signed versus what I want to carry all day.
I envy you. I truly do. I think you seem like a decent fellow, and I've watched your stream and the way you approach this stuff. I in some ways one wishes one was new again, like
Mm,
to just discover some of the stuff that I know you're about to get into is
right,
like, oh wait till he picks this book up. Oh, he's gonna lose his mind when he reads this. Oh, you
right.
thought that person was with so and so. Oh hell no. Like, like
Yeah,
because it's what minimum, depending on when you want to go back to, it's a minimum of 30 years of stuff of playing
right,
catch up, right? And
right.
if you want to go back to really go back, you're talking 60, 70 years of crap.
Hmm.
So, welcome, brother. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So we've got quite a few people here in the chat. Let's see. Kev says he's not getting any sound. I hope you're getting it now. Brandon says the sound is good for him. Let's see. Menterprise says the first major con he went to was Raleigh SuperCon, now named GalaxyCon. Word. I'm trying to go to GalaxyCon this year. They didn't hit me back about press passes, but I'm just going to buy a pass anyway. The only person that's at that con that I want to see is Priest, but
Oh,
I'm
man.
going to go because it's Priest.
Gotta go.
So I'm still mad because Marvel pushed back the Priest Black Panther omnibus, and I was gonna bring that to get signed. But
Uh,
I did have this hat custom made, and if I can get Priest to sign my Milestone hat, I think that's life
oh,
goal.
that's really unique because a lot of people don't understand that he was there.
Right,
Like they think it was the ones they know about, but he was
right,
actually Milestone. I don't know. He's on the launch pad, but he didn't get in the ship.
right. Exactly,
Right.
exactly. Have you ever dug up his old blog?
I think I read it when he was doing it, but it's been a million. It's been a minute.
So it's like it's not well, it is still online, but it's clearly a relic of its time. But just reading Priest just ranting about everything that Priest has ever wanted to rant about because
Mm-hmm.
it's like you can tell he feels like nobody's reading it anyway. That seems to be the attitude with which it's written.
Mm-hmm.
But there's gold in there. I love it.
He's a
And so,
gifted writer, and he was very much an insider. His career path was the original career path where he didn't come in as a writer. He had to sort
mhm,
of crawl and fight and cajole and do what he needed to do to get a shot to write anything.
mhm,
Um, uh, Probably people don't realize that there's a writer called Jim Owsley, who was
mhm,
also Christopher Priest, and at some point
right.
he changed his name to Christopher Priest. And I don't know that it's any of my business why he did that, but like, so you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
what you're talking, you're going through the memory lane of my childhood and young adulthood right now. So I'm
Mm,
like, going,
word.
yup. I just sit here and
Yeah.
go, yup, yup.
So yeah, for me, it's like, so I got into comics in 2019. I started watching YouTubers and kind of run smack into like Comicsgate. And
Oh Lord.
I'm not necessarily, well, I shouldn't say I'm not anti-Comicsgate. I'm not for like just saying, all right, this group of people, I don't like you, right? It just seems weird to me. But what I will say is like I would get into a channel for its comic reviews, and then I'd
Mm-hmm,
watch like another stream, and it's like, yo,
mm-hmm.
do you like hate me? Like, if you saw me in real life, would you want to fight me or something? Like, that's the way these people talk online. So
Well, it's online.
exactly, exactly. So that kind of had me seeking out like just other stuff, right? And so that's how I
Yeah.
ended up, with Milestone or buying so much Milestone. I read Milestone. I'm like, oh, okay, this. You know, how people like they'll read a book and like, yeah, that author, that writer, he really understands the character, right?
Mm-hmm,
I read
mm-hmm.
Milestone. I'm like, yo, whoever wrote this like knows me, which is cool, especially since it's
Yeah.
a 30-year-old book.
Well, I think, I mean, I've waxed on about this a lot with different
Hmm.
places. I'm probably overlapping some of the things I've said about that in the past. But what you're experiencing is what all of us experienced back in the day. Like, I've written only one fan letter to any comic book ever, and that was to Icon. And it was after, I think, issue 2 or 1, like early. And the thing was just like what you just said. I was overwhelmed by the authenticity and the approach. Now, remember, this was at the same time that there was Comico, there was First Comics, there was Eclipse Comics, there was the first version of Valiant Comics, then there was Defiant Comics, there was Image, right? And in all that mix, and you can kind of count Vertigo Comics at DC, because it was the first time that any of these companies that really tried to do a hardcore imprint, right? Where we're over here doing our thing. Do not consider us to be DC Comics. That's just the logo we have to share, right? And in this mix came this sort of little upstart of prose. It was sort of, I think the reason Image was founded was ultimately financial and creative control. I think the reason that Milestone was founded was because these guys had been coming up in the system, and they were like, that's not a glass ceiling, that's a glass brick wall. That's a glass, like, there's only so much I'm going to ever get to do. And it's not fair. So here's what we're going to do about it. And what they did about it was what I always say you should do about it is they lit a candle. The Milestone was an embrace of all the rest of us, and included the guys who had been gotten the spotlight. It wasn't like they didn't have white characters front and center. They just weren't primarily centered, was the thing. And they had to undergo, which I know that they knew going in that they would have to from the comic book press of the day. There was a lot of antipathy towards them. There was a lot of aggression towards them. And they were very lucky, and their spokesman was Dwayne McDuffie, because he was the most reasonable person you probably will ever meet in your life. He approached life with humor and reason, and he understood the problems, but he was like, and here's how we'll get around it. And he wasn't a saint. I don't like that kind of, like, when somebody dies, you make them into like what they've done to Martin Luther King. He was a practical, pragmatic, gifted creator who understood the world he lived in and wanted it to be a little bit better. And him and his friends got together and tried to do that. And I appreciate Milestone back then. I get teared up when I think about it and what the impact it had on. People were calling me from all over the world. Like, did you see this? You know, I was like, dude, I have the comic book. I told you about it. Well, don't act like you're telling me anything. So, you know, welcome. But everything you're experiencing, just understand there was no such thing as that prior to Milestone. Like picture a world where no one had ever even tried anything like that. The last would have been, well, there was a smaller group, and they got in people's faces, called Ania Comics. But frankly, they weren't very good. So they didn't catch. And prior to that, Black, All Negro Comics #1 in 1930 or 40, whatever. That's it.
It's wild. And it's funny. So, like, bringing up this conversation, right, just on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, in 2022, right, we just got this insane Miles Morales comic. Right? What if Miles Morales was Thor? So I wrote an editorial, and I called it Miles Morales.
Disclosure, I have not read this. So this is all cold to me, man.
Cool. So no worries. I just published this last night, but my title is Miles Morales is Marvel's Black Friend.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So, and if you guys haven't read it, it's at comicsaredope.com, which is my blog that I don't update nearly as often as I should. But I made time yesterday to write what ended up being like a two-page paper on what's wrong with comics. And I don't typically do that. Typically, I just enjoy stories as they are. But I read this book, and it just kept getting worse. Like, it just kept getting worse. Like, the first page, you've got, like, it's one thing to be like, you know, the dialogue is insensitive, right? But it's like the whole... What's
Okay,
up?
never mind. You're scrolling, and I'm looking at the imagery, and I was like, "Wait a minute, that's not from the actual. That's from the past."
Right.
Okay,
No, that. So, oh my bad. So, in this part, I'm of the op-ed. I'm just like, look, like insensitive depictions are nothing new, or inaccurate portrayals are nothing new. Here's sub-Saharan Killmonger with a Jerry curl, right? And it's also just highlighting
yeah,
that T'Challa, as much as we praise him now, it's not like he was just this beacon of strength. He was constantly getting beat up and
no,
mauled
that's
and
correct.
manhandled,
That's correct. There
you
was
know.
Stanley and Jack's version of
Hmm.
T'Challa. Then there was a whole long gap where he was just getting punked out all the time and doing sort of the Negro thing. And then
Right,
Chris Priest showed up and turned him into what everybody loves now.
right,
Like that's all on Priest, 100%.
right. And that doesn't even happen to what, 98?
That's correct. So
That's
how many decades are we talking about? Right.
right. Right. Like the 200th issue, like when we're talking about legacy numbering, the 200th issue of Black Panther just came out.
Hmm.
Like that's not a lot of history because they could not keep Black Panther in print, or maybe didn't want to.
Well, his primary title was a book called Jungle Action for
Right.
quite some time. I don't believe we'll ever see another book called Jungle Action again.
I, I hope not.
I don't think so.
But then again, we did just get Miles Morales yelling hammer time. So I
I
mean,
mean,
while we're in the
first
past,
of
we might
all,
say
Hammer Time, really? Come on, man.
that wasn't even the worst one. At one
I
point,
know. I looked at the pages.
he walks in the room and goes, "All eyes on me." Like we just
Come on,
yelling.
man. By Odin's Fade? Come on
Yeah.
now. Come on now. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Why did the Frost Giant have a double part?
Dude,
There's
dude,
just
why did he graffiti Mjolnir? Why? Like, there's a billion things. Like,
yeah,
he could literally took a random page,
yeah. No,
you know.
like
And people, I saw so many people pointing out, does this fool know what what sneakers hung from a line in a neighborhood means?
right.
Because that's not decoration, yo. Like,
Also, why does Asgard have power lines?
right? Like, there's a million things,
So
right?
I'm sure it's supposed to be interpreted as, oh, what if Asgard was Brooklyn? But
Okay.
but why would Asgard ever be Brooklyn?
Also, there are versions of all of these places that a lot of people who aren't from those places and don't know the history of those places would never would not depict. Like if you chose Harlem
Hmm.
and said Asgard is Harlem, sure, you could choose the 1970s when people were shooting each other and there were crack dens and things like that, or you
Hmm.
could choose the Harlem Renaissance, and that's Asgard.
Right,
But you have to know. You have to be of interest. You don't have to be black, but you damn sure have to know,
right, right,
right, to have access to it.
right.
So,
So in this
um,
piece, my argument is there should just be people with at least familiarity with Black people in the editor's space, right? Like there.
mhm,
What's surprising to me is not that this gets written, it's that it gets scripted, drawn, inked, colored, test prints, and it is in shops. And no
yep.
one, no one
I don't know,
said,
man.
I don't think
I have
people,
to. You have to ask the question: Who's this for? Who is the
right,
target audience of this book? Now, I'm not saying it in a critical way. I'm saying
mhm,
at some point somebody's supposed to ask that question: Who are we making this book for?
right,
Right? Not that you're trying to in advance guess what the audience wants and do that, but that who's buying the book? Who's going to buy it?
right, right,
I don't know. I just don't know. Like I always assume everyone on our side of the desk, in my experience, is doing their best. I don't
mhm,
think anyone is. I've seen criticisms where people say, "Well, they're just trolling the audience." I'm like, nobody does that, man.
right,
Nobody does that. Literally, nobody does that. Okay, everybody's doing their best. You may not like their best. You may not like their point of view.
mhm,
Okay, maybe they're too ignorant to be writing in the subject area that they're writing in. Maybe they're not good enough to write in the
mhm,
subject area. But you can't take away from the idea that they're doing their best. This is
right,
their best. Okay, the company is not trying to not sell you books. That is
right,
not their goal. Okay, so then I go back to the question of, so who was buying this one?
right. And what's crazy is like the other three issues of the series haven't been bad. Um,
Okay,
coincidentally, the fourth one's the only one not written by a Black person. But like you said, I
wow,
don't think you have to be Black to write Black characters. You
certainly
just have
not. They're
to care
and they've
about them.
no more than you have to be white to write white ones.
Right.
God knows I wouldn't have a career if that was the rule. So, but yeah, I think you have to do, depending on how far away from your personal experience something is, it's your job as the writer to dig. And
Right.
if you can't find the data, then you call up a friend. And if you don't have a friend, you ask a friend who has a friend,
Right.
right? Like in Blood Syndicate, I'm writing a whole lot of queer characters. I myself am not queer, but I am queer adjacent in my friendships. So if I feel like I'm stepping too far out of line in some area, which isn't just general humanity, like there's a whole bunch of crap you can just write because it's just general humanity, and people will act away because they're people. It doesn't matter who they're in love with, but
Right.
there are things within different subcultures, which I'm not a part of that subculture. So if I'm going to try and write some sort of personal debate, or here's what goes on in that kind of a club, or here's what happens when the cops come and do X, right? If I don't know, it's my job to ask someone who does. Like that's literally part of your job as a writer.
Right.
So I feel like a lot of due diligence is not paid to certain kinds of things because some writers think I can gloss over, or I know that. I already know that. I watch rap videos, therefore I know what I'm talking about. And I'm like,
right. Now, so I'm curious because I'm not privy to this information, right? But you, like me, don't make the majority of your money in comics, right? I do
No.
other things and I buy comics with it.
Yeah.
Do you think some of it is just a lack of effort because the money's not there?
People say that, but again, I know many a person who has broken their fortune trying to write and make comics for particular audiences. I know people that would probably push their grandmother in front of a bus to get to write for Marvel or DC,
Right.
for the pay that they're paying. So we kind of have to assume that the people in the box are the winners of that fight, that they also really wanted to be there.
Gotcha.
Again, I think everybody's bringing their A game. I think the problem in the fan base is that you assume everybody's A game is the same, right? Neil Gaiman's A game, that's not random brand new person's A game.
Right.
Okay. So if you're comparing everything to your favorite, Mark Waid, Neil Gaiman, I don't know, Marv Wolfman, somebody, Chris Claremont, if you're comparing, everybody's A game has to be that, then a whole bunch of people aren't going to make the cut. Like a stack of people are not going to make the cut. But it doesn't mean they're not doing their best. Right. So I don't believe that the money prevents people from doing it. Mark Waid just came back to DC. Mark Waid does not need that money. He doesn't need the money.
Right.
Okay. He literally straight up does not need that money. He is not paying a single bill with the check that he's getting writing World Finance. Okay.
Right.
He's just there because he wants to do it. Okay. I just don't think that that's real. I think that's some made up crap in the YouTubosphere where they can't get the best because they're not paying the highest rates. Dude, my salary making these comics for Marvel and DC is maybe a fifth of what I get paid to write a script for a TV. So why am I here? Is it the crappy paycheck that they can get me for? No, it's because I want to, and they're letting me. Like, I want to do it.
Right.
Right. So if I'm doing that from my end of the earning spectrum, I can only assume that the people who this is all they do for a living, it must be that they love it. They want to be in the box. So,
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. Bunkmaster B says, honestly, I think it's a problem when Black characters are only written by Black writers. That's what Priestess fought against. That's what pigeonholes great characters as niche.
All right, let me speak to that.
Okay.
Let me speak to that real quick. Christopher Priest came up in an environment in comics where he was one of maybe 4 Black people backstage. Okay. He had to fight to get jobs. And look at his earlier work, a lot of it was predicated on, oh, this is the Falcon or this is the Black Panther or whatever. And yes, because he earns his living doing that, of course he felt pigeonholed. Of course he felt like, why can't I write Superman? And he's absolutely right to say so. But again, the vast majority of people who are making up these characters are straight white men for 70 years. Okay. So when you say in a sentence, well, only black writers should not write, you know, it's not right that only black or writers or only queer writers or only whoever writers should write the thing that they are. Yeah,
Mm.
sure. In some sort of weirdly equal where everything was always equal, you might have a case for that argument. But in
Mm.
fact, it's skewed horribly the other
Mm.
way for almost a century of
Mm.
making comics now. Okay,
Right.
so in the last, what, 10 years, the companies, and by the way, it's not altruism that make them do this. They just don't want the smoke when someone finds out that a non whatever person is writing this kind of person. Find
Right.
out a bunch of straight people are writing queer people. Somebody in the queer community is going to be like, you better get that right, because I'll
Hmm.
be right here with my knives. You write black people wrong, Latin people wrong. There's a stack of people ready to come for you, and not just the individual. The company
Yeah.
doesn't want any of that. So
Yeah.
the best way to hedge their bet is to say, well, you're from that culture.
Yeah.
So at least we'll have the authenticity. Now, I'm not saying that's the right approach. I
Yeah.
wish it was a flat field. I do well on a flat field. I don't
Mhm.
personally care. I will take any comer. I will go after any gladiator. And if they beat me from quality, they beat me. And there's no shame in being beaten by a superior opponent.
Right.
Okay. But to divorce yourself from the notion that plenty of people were not being allowed to play strictly because they were the wrong gender, or they fell in love with the wrong person, or they were the wrong color,
Mhm.
that's a lie.
Yeah.
That's a lie. And you don't get to tell lies in front of me.
Right.
Okay. So I say all that to say this. No, that should not be the defining factor. Quality of writing should be the defining factor. But Chris
Mhm.
Rock said this a long time ago, and I think it's true. If I'm in a position to hire two people and they're both equal, and one of them's black and one of them's white, or one of them's female and one of them's male, or one of them's queer and one of them's straight, and they're exactly equal, I'm giving the edge to the person who's not a straight white male.
Mhm.
But if the same two writers show up and one of them's better and the other one's weaker, and the white guy or white lady is the stronger writer, they're getting the job.
Yeah.
Okay. And that black person or that queer person can be pissy about it all they want. But I'm not in the business of hiring crap people because they have the same skin color as me.
Yeah.
Right. So it has to be equal. Ties go to the person who's been usually kept out. But if you're superior, you get the gig.
Yeah.
That's how I roll. All
Right.
right. I wish these companies would work like that, because
Yeah.
then it would slowly flatten the field out for everybody. But they are very concerned with optics. All media companies are extremely concerned with optics, and
Right.
they're not trying to have any smoke in the media about it. It's not just Twitter, it's the New York Times, it's the LA Times, it's freaking like they don't want any of it. And
That's true.
this is their solve.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I guess I would want the playing field to be flat too, right? But the converse of your earlier argument, right? Who's to say when white people are portrayed wrong if they're not Jewish?
Well, here's the thing about it. There's a okay. When I tell young creators of color, you don't get to use the crutch of your ethnicity. It
Mm.
is absolutely possible you did not get that job because you're black. But if I hear you whining about it, you can take it. You can. There's the exit. Here's
Mm.
why: you don't know, and you're never going to know, right?
Mm.
So you have to err on the side of stupidity. If before racism comes stupidity, you
Mm.
always have to start with they're just dumb. Okay, but um, but there's a thing about being a minority that is it's sort of a judo move that a lot of people have been flexing too hard for my point.
Mm.
This is a European nation. It's born out of Europe and European ideals, and the rest of us are here for different reasons. Obviously, slave descended black people are here because of that. But there's a stack of like half my ancestry is from the Caribbean. They just
Mm.
emigrated.
Right.
Like just like I don't like it here, I'm going over there. Just like
Right.
all the other immigrants, right?
Hmm.
Okay. But there's mostly white people here. So they get to tell a whole variation of stories about themselves. Okay. So there's white Jewish people, I can tell that story. There's white Irish people, I can tell that story as a white person, right? It sort of flattens out the experience for them.
Mm.
And so unless you're getting really in the weeds about Jewish subculture or Italian subculture or whatever, you're just sort of doing generic American. The
Right.
problem comes, right, when you're trying to talk about a culture you're not a part of, right? Or you're coming from one of those cultures and you're trying to You're trying to compete in the mainstream, so-called. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All of the people from those subcultures have to understand how the mainstream works, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the mainstream being white people. You have
Mm-hmm.
to know how that works. You cannot write white people if you don't know how they work. But the same obligation is not true for people who are members of the dominant culture, because it doesn't cost them anything not to know. They don't
Mm-hmm.
lose anything by not knowing how we really operate. They can separate and they can function only on stereotype.
Yeah.
We can't do that as a survival skill. We cannot function on stereotype because it is not a survival adaptation, right?
Right.
So I it's a thorny issue,
Mm-hmm.
but like I said, I would prefer scripts to be with no names on them. Here's my pitch. I would prefer, like, the artists have it much easier than the writers do because they don't suffer from this. If someone can draw their ass off, they're probably getting a job.
Right.
Right? But writing, um, that's handshakes and who likes who and who went to college with whoever, and
Mm-hmm.
and that means a lot of people are left out of the potential job pool.
Yeah.
And that, whether you're a liberal or not, for all those years, if you don't know anybody in the other ethnic group or the other gender group or whatever that wants to do this, how are you
Mm-hmm.
supposed to find them? You
Yeah.
don't know anybody, right? And how are they supposed to approach you? They don't know you.
Right.
So, I don't think of it as this sort of active anti anything for all these years. There are
Mm-hmm.
some people like that, some editors like that. Mostly, I just think is that they just didn't have access to each other. The two groups or multiple groups didn't have access to each other for a lot
Right.
of American reasons.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah. Now, speaking of, writers kind of having to know someone, I don't think I've heard a comic story yet where it was just, oh, I submitted a script and it's it's always, yeah, I know this guy from this place. He put my name in the hat, right?
yeah,
For you,
yeah.
your story is it Jerry or Gary Dugan?
Jerry
Jerry.
Duggan.
Jerry Duggan. Great. Now I
Um,
know how to say his name.
Jerry and I know each other for a long time. He used to work the counter at my LCS,
Mm,
um, and we've been in each other's lives. We circle back into each other's lives. We're not like deep friends. We're at the barbecue together, but we're also, when we see each other, we're always happy to see each other. Like,
gotcha.
he's a good guy. I tried for a long time to break into regular comics, and I could not get arrested, basically. So I
Mm,
said to hell with it and moved on to other things. I'm a Bruce Lee go be like water type of guy.
uh-huh.
So I was like, oh, I guess that's closed off. I'll go over here.
Right.
Right. But I have 50,000, or I had 50,000. I have like 38,000 comics now. I
Mm,
love comic books. Everybody knows me, knows I freaking love comic books. At some point, after I had produced television series,
mm,
after I had written novels, right? After that, I get a call from a friend of mine and says, and this has happened twice. My friend Jerry said, look, I hope this was okay. He'd already done this. We were
mm,
at some summit and they were looking to bring in some new blood. And I threw your name in the hat. I hope that was cool. And I was like, why wouldn't that be cool? You know me. I mean, I
mm,
don't think anything's going to come of it, but thanks, brother. Whatever. And many, many weeks go by to the point where I forgot about it.
mm,
Like I probably forgot about it that day. Like, whatever. Thanks, Jerry.
right.
Whatever. And then Axel Alonso called me up and he's like, so look, we vetted you. We think you might be able to write some comics. And I was like, that's very sweet of you, Mr. Axel Alonso, considering I've already written for Dark Horse and I've got a stack of a bunch of indie comics out there. Thank you
Mm,
for your seal of approval. What are we talking about?
mm,
And he's like, well, do you have a pitch for Black Panther? And I was like, what? Right?
right.
Like, holy crap.
Mm,
Long story short, obviously, they did not buy my pitch for Black Panther. They gave it to Ta-Nehisi Coates.
mm,
But all the pitches that I gave to them, they were like, I like the way you think. What else you got?
mm,
And I always tell young writers, if you don't have a good answer to what else you got, don't bother. Because if
mm.
you only have one thing, go home.
Gotcha.
Go home. Okay? Because the first thing is probably going to be no. If you
Mm,
only have one thing, the first thing out your mouth is almost certainly going to be told, nope, we're not doing that. What else you
mm.
got? And if you got nothing to follow up with, take your ass home because they already forgot about you. Okay. Seriously, when I pitch something, I pitch no less than 10 things.
Wow.
Completely different than the other things, because they're going to ask you what else you got. So what else I had was, and before I started talking, I think I've told this story before, Axel said, first of all, let me stop you before you say anything. Can't do anything with the X-Men. I was like, what? And then he's like, and I started saying, okay, well, what about it? He's like, don't even touch the Avengers. Nope. And I was like, well, everybody's been an Avenger. What does that even leave me? Like, at this point, the whole Marvel universe has at one point been an Avenger. Right? And he's like, and don't even think about the Fantastic Four. We don't own the rights to them right now, so we're not doing much with them. Right? Blah, 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 blah. So I was like, so what does that leave me, Mr. Axel? So, and he's like, well, you got any original ideas? And I was like, again, like constantly spitting out my milk, like, what?
Right.
It's like, holy crap. Right? So I pitched him what ultimately became Mosaic. And he's like, I love all of that. It didn't have a name yet. It was going to be more like a Vertigo book, which is part of what I think sold him. It was much going to be like a body horror type of science fiction story. And obviously it mutated over the course of development, whatever, into the book. But while we were making Mosaic, Jerry calls me up again. He's like, so look, Marvel's going to be relaunching. We're going to be launching these spinoffs from Deadpool and the Mercs for Money. One of them's going to be Solo. Do you want to come in on it? Right? And I was like, Solo? Why would you do a book about Solo? Solo was, I mean, nothing against Mercs for Money, but Solo? Really? Who's buying that? I'm not buying that, and I buy everything.
Right.
Right? And he's like, look, are you going to do it or not? Like, fine, what do I care? Let's have some fun with it. And he said, good, because they said we can do anything we want. And I was like, really, anything? He's like, yep, go for it. So we went and we sort of worked out. We went to this restaurant we like, and we worked out basically the first 5 issues or whatever. And we're like, cool, dope, let's go. And then as soon as we started working on it, he basically backed out because he's like, look, I got a lot on my plate, man. Can you take the full ride on this? And I was like, what has just happened here? What? It's like, whatever. So, and of course, Solo came out and nobody read it, as I predicted right at the top. But it doesn't even matter whether it was good or bad. It's Solo. Like, no one's buying that book. But I had a good time, and I got in with the Marvel Spider-Man office. And if you look at Mosaic, I don't know if it's issue 1 or 2, Jerry's in it. He's the guy, yeah. He, like, I put him in it. Like, he's the guy yelling about, I need to see a doctor.
Right.
All right. But the truth is, yes, it's recommendation. But the difference between me and, say, somebody else who got another recommendation, there are plenty of people who got comic book jobs who've done nothing, never written one word, never done anything in the comic book or in the entertainment realm. When Axel Alonso tells me, hey, we checked you out, what did he check out? I have been a producer and writer on, at that point, multiple live action TV shows and ongoing writer on multiple animated TV series. I had written for the Star Trek line of books, to the point where the company kept hiring me short stories and books. And I had a stack of independent comics already out. So when you are checking me out to see if maybe I can do it, hell yeah, I can do it.
Right.
Okay. So the vetting process for me was considerably steeper than the same exact guy, but white. Sorry about it, folks. That's a fact. Okay. You know that because there's plenty of people who aren't good at it who got in because they met somebody. They shook a hand, or they said the right thing at the bar at the bar part of the convention. Cronyism is a thing. I'm not a fan of it. Nothing I can do about it.
Right.
So I can't really get mad at it if it works in my favor, understanding that when one of my cronies recommends me, they're recommending a howitzer to shoot an ant. Right? Not recommending an unknown commodity. They can literally go look at the battles I've won and go, yeah, we can trust this dude. So same thing basically happened with DC. An animation guy that I've worked with, Jim Krieg, who's a lovely man. He called me up. At that time, I was co-executive producer on a show called Power Book 2 Ghost. And I was a number two on that show. I was not thinking about, certainly wasn't thinking about DC Comics. Like,
Right.
never crossed my mind I'd be writing any DC Comics ever. He says, look, they got the heads of the various departments together. So animation, live action, comics, everything, games. We all get together, we're all talking, and the same conversation came up. They basically looked around and went, we don't have enough non-white men around here. And also, we've been hiring the same 4 or 5 people over and over again for the last 15 years. Maybe we should get some new blood in here. And he said, in this case, in advance, is it okay if I mention you? Right. And I was like, what are you, high? Go mention me. Yes. Like, what's wrong with you? Right. And again, I get a call from Dan DiDio. Hey, so we sort of looked into you. Are you interested in doing this? And I'm like, yeah, you looked into me. Dude, can you come by? And I was like, not hostile. I talk as if I'm always hostile. I'm actually mostly not hostile.
Right.
But I said, look, I'm working. I can't just be like picking up from the TV show I'm producing and run over to DC to have a meeting about comic books. So can we work this out? I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't just come over. He's like, I'll get back. And he did. Finally, I was able to find a day where I had an afternoon clear, and I drove over to Burbank, and we had a nice talk. I pitched him 15 something things. Right. This is while I guess the whole 5G controversy was happening. I don't pay attention to that crap. I didn't know any of this.
I hear they're going to make Batman black and kill everybody.
Whatever. Everybody's going to be dead and gay. They're going to be both dead and gay. But he said, what you got for me? And I pitched him a bunch of stuff. I pitched him an awesome Lois Lane book that he did not buy because they had plans for Lois. Man, that would have been dope as DAF, as the children say. And I pitched him a bunch of stuff. And the things that he keyed to were a Black Hawk pitch, Green Lantern, but it wasn't Green Lantern then. It was John Stewart. And what was the third one? I wanted to bring the Global Guardians. I wanted to redo the Global Guardians and make them relevant. And he liked all of those, but the one that landed was the John Stewart thing. And then I've talked about this in other channels, but it mutated it to me. It was always it started out as a miniseries, and it mutated into me running the whole book. So
gotcha.
That's that you could literally just do one whole show on just how that happened. So we're not going to detour into that. So yeah, but yes, in terms of connections, but I built those connections up by being successful in a frankly more competitive area.
I would say.
I've always loved comics, so if they open the door, I'm going to put that whole foot in that door jam and be like, "Yup, you're damn right. I want to do some comics. Let's go. What you got?"
So when you do your research on Geoffrey Thorne, right, you get a few things that come up, right? There's obviously whatever the most recent book you've done is, but then there's also like In the Heat of the Night, Where Are They Now? And it's like, oh, Geoffrey Thorne's a writer, and they're like, wow, he really quit cold turkey, and that's
yes, he did.
That's what happens, right? So, for those watching, your grandmother may know Mr. Jeff Thorne.
Everybody's grandmother loved that show,
right? As Officer Wilson Sweet. Look, so I joked with last week's guest that I had any number of comics I could be reading to prepare for this interview. But instead, I found myself watching 2 seasons straight of In the Heat.
What is wrong with you? Why? Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
So, I did my Googles, and I found out that you didn't even show up on the show until season 2. But I'm like, you can't start a show at season 2. You can absolutely start that show at season 2.
Yeah, that was a brand new day for that show. Like, don't even bother with season 1.
Right. But I watched season 1, and it's Sidney Poitier movie.
Why?
I don't know, but I went down the rabbit hole, and once I got down the rabbit hole, I couldn't stop until I got to a good stopping point, which for me was season 2, episode 5, and that's like the first episode where your character Wilson Sweet gets like a big spotlight. So it's the
one the one about the dead grandfather or whatever.
It was
the girlfriend.
It was your childhood friend. You arrested him, and he gets like killed by the police in the other county.
Right, and then I went undercover. to prove that they killed him in the jail. Yeah.
Right. And which was what? No, I mean, this was my question was like, what did Sweet think was going to happen, right? Because he
Oh,
very
he's an
well could
idiot.
have died.
He could have
He
died.
didn't have a
Absolutely.
walkie-talkie, and it's not like he was
Nope.
communicating with
And
anyone.
nobody knew. They had to. They all had to check with each other to figure out where he'd even gone.
Right. They just guessed.
He was an idiot.
Like,
He was an idiot.
I think he might have gotten himself arrested.
And that's the handle. He's always doing crazy stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
That was great. That was great.
God bless you. God bless you.
So I watched that and I was like, I don't know. I'm sure. I mean, I only watched 5 episodes of the season that you were in, but I'm like, you did 6 seasons, but I'm sure I'm not getting a better performance than that, or a better distillation of the character than that, I should say. And so
I don't know how to recommend that show. To me, that seems like another life. I quit acting altogether in 2000, and I quit that show well before it was over.
Right.
It was of its time.
Mm-hmm.
This was the time when shows like Murder, She Wrote and Matlock,
right,
and all your grandparents' shows.
Exactly.
But they were big time back then. Basically, the movie industry was like, well, we're done with a lot of these people, but they had what they used to call, what was it called? Some kind of TVQ, right? They had high popularity in the target demographic. So let's grab Angela Lansbury and build a show around her. Let's grab Carol O'Connor and build a show around her, and so on and so on. And that's why there's so many. And I did a couple of them. I did that show. I did, what is it? The thing with Dick Van Dyke? Diagnosis Murder. Diagnosis Murder was my last official job in Hollywood. And I was like, well, time for Jeff to go. I've had it. But by the way, that was the perfect job to end. My dad met my mom and took her on her first date to see Mary Poppins, starring Dick Van Dyke. So I was like, I think this is a sign. I'm working with Dick Van Dyke. I don't think I'm doing better than this. I'm out.
That is awesome.
Right. And so I mean, you can keep watching if you want to, but it's a time and a place. I almost look at that like, it's not negative like this, but it's almost like if you went to jail for 10 years and then people ask what was jail like 10 years after you got out.
Right.
It'd be like, I mean, that was another version of me. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it was a weird time. I like being an actor, but I was always a writer. Acting was a detour from being a writer.
Got you. And that's what I was going to ask, like how you made that transition from being on camera to writing, where you've clearly found success.
It wasn't easy. So I quit Heat of the Night. I worked on a couple other jobs after that. Couple of series that didn't go, which I would have been another regular on. There were shows that I was up for and who beat me. Eric LaSalle beat me out on ER. Don Cheadle beat me out on a show called Picket Fences. I'm trying to think. Basically, people who are movie stars or big TV stars now, it was me and them for a given job, and they would get the job, right? So I was like, I'm going to be Uncle Phil for the rest of my life. I'm not doing that.
Right.
I'm going to be like Will Smith's chubby uncle, for the rest of. No, I'm not doing that. Like, if only I had known what the movie industry was going to turn into, I might have stayed an actor. But because like there was no Game of Thrones on the horizon, there was no Star Trek Discovery on the horizon. Right. The Marvel Universe, nobody was even thinking about that. Like that was a joke back then. Right. So I was like, I'm looking down the barrel of, and by the way, there are plenty of actors who make very healthy lives out of the life that I was looking at. Like I was successful. It wasn't like I wasn't doing well. It was just like I'm doing well doing stuff that I would watch. Why am I always in things that I would never watch?
Yeah.
Right. And it's always the same over and over character type stuff. Like this character, you change the name and shove it in this other show. It's the same dude. I'm out. And there was a stupid decision because I had nothing to fall back on. I literally, like I would tell you, I have a fallback career. My fallback career was I kind of know how to draw a little bit. And that was terrible. So for about 3 or 4 years, it was rough, dude. I can't even like this. You've told me to keep it PG. So I cannot describe how bad those years were in a PG context. But it was rough. So the transition happened when I went to my agency at the time and I said, so here's some scripts. And well, first of all, they were mad that I'd quit my shows. And second, they were like, the hell is this? You're not writing yourself any parts, sir. That is not how any of this works. Right. And I was like, I'm not in this. There's no tall black dude in this story. Just read it.
You just
and they're like,
cut off our revenue and you just brought this paper in. What do you want us to do?
We don't care about any of this. Right. So that was basically a wake up call for early 20s Jeff, that no, the world doesn't work like that. And I was on my ass for like 3 years. My accountant ripped me off to the tune of, let's say conservatively, 100K, and screwed off to Bolivia or someplace. Never got caught, never came home, and I wasn't the only client he did that to. So he went out, he left like a G. But I mean, and again, that's a whole episode just about that period.
Right.
But you find out who your friends are in that period of time, and I ended up with very few. Like, gotcha. I don't know anyone from my acting days except for one guy, really, the David Hart, the guy who played Parker on the show you just watched.
Oh, yeah.
Him and me stayed tight. Basically, everybody I came up with, that's it.
Parker's the nosy police officer who is just always listening in on phone calls and other conversations.
David is a lovely human being. I met my woman who's my wife during that period. Turned out she was a ride or die chick. I was like, cool, right? And very instrumental in getting me to become a writer, in the sense that I was trying to write screenplays and not getting very far with it. I wanted to write movies. And I wasn't getting any kind of nothing with it. She's like, well, maybe you should try write short stories. I've read some of your short stories. Try it. You know, I'm like, I don't know if they like, that might be a 1950s idea of how much money you can make selling short stories. Like, I don't think
Senator Reader's Digest.
Yeah, it's not like the way you're talking about. But I tried it and I got some success at it.
Nice.
And what was really funny was people who would not read my scripts prior to me selling some Star Trek stuff and a couple of little magazines here and there, like that, all of a sudden those exact same people would answer phone calls, because now I was a real writer from that point of view. I was a novelist or whatever coming to Hollywood to do scripts rather than just one more jerk trying to sell scripts in Hollywood. And I was like, okay, I guess that's a new lesson on how things work.
Wow.
And that went on for a minute. I got into development on some early on projects which didn't pay very much, and in one case paid zero. But I met a lot of people who liked my work. And then at some point I got a call from a friend of mine who I'd done some illustration type, like, let me rephrase that. He was the illustrator. He's my best friend now. But he was the illustrator. And I would do, like, if you know how comic books are made, there's a process called flatting where you lay out the primary colors of for the colorists so they can come in and do all the like nuance and make it look cool. The boring, ugly part of that job is the flatting. It is an awful job. It is awful, awful, awful. But I was so broke, I was like, hey, you need me flatten work done? Because I can bang that out for you. Right. So he would toss me work like that. And at one point he called me up and he says, hey, I met this lady. She's got a hookup at Law and Order. Once you got ideas, she wants to pitch them, and she wants to talk to you about going and writing a script with her. And I was like, well, she's got 2 of the 3 things that you need. Why is she just writing this script? What does she need me for? Right. And also, she's worked inside the organization as a researcher or something, so she knows the people. So she can literally write a script and hand it off to the executive producer of that biggest show on TV.
Right.
What is she calling me for? I'm nobody. Right. And my wife she wasn't my wife yet, but we were living together. And she was like, are you stupid? What are you trying to talk yourself out of work for? Right. And I'm like, who are you, woman? Who let you in my office? Right. But so long story short with that, she told me what her idea was. And I was like, yeah, that is dope. But again, I asked you again, what do you need me for? Just go and tell your friends they're a great idea. And, you know, she's like, look, I write romantic comedy. I don't write crime. Our mutual friend says you write crime very well. And I was like, well, I do. But again, this is an idea. You can just go pitch this. Right. And she's like, yes, but I don't want to. I want to be the writers on it. I just don't want to give them an idea and they pay me to walk away. And I'm like, so take your time. It's not that difficult. If you already know how to write, you can write in any genre. You just have to learn the rules of the genre. Right. She's like, yeah, but I have a window. There's a window. Like I could learn it if I had a year, but they're not going to be looking at scripts for this long. We've got like maybe a month, and the
Mm-hmm.
learning curve's too steep. I won't be good enough to writing crime to bring them a script that they won't sneer at, right?
Right.
Whereas our friend says you can write, and I read the stuff that you showed me. You can.
Mm.
You have the idea. So I was like, all right, what do you want to do with this? So we partner up, and I said, what does that mean when you say that? Because I'm not normally a partner type writer.
Mm.
Like never a partner type writer. I just write it. And she's like, well, I got the idea. You plot it and write it. I will be like the editor. I'll make sure it stays on point if you deviate or whatever. And we'll take it in as if we wrote it together, and they'll give us a show and we'll be awesome. And I was like, you are adorable. Okay, let's try it. Nonsense. None all of that was crazy. That's not how any of this works.
Right.
But we wrote it. We took it in. They said, hell no, we're not doing this stupid pilot. But would you like to be staff writers as a team? In Hollywood, when you come in as a team, they pay you as if you're one writer. So you split the same salary that one writer would get between two people. So for them, it was great. They got a black woman and a black man, which they had none of. Okay. They didn't have to pay us much. Right. And one of them was already in the organization. So she sort of knew how it all worked anyway. So they didn't have to train anybody. Right. And so we were on Criminal Intent for season 9, the Jeff Goldblum, Saffron Burrows season. And that was me breaking in.
That's funny. My wife loves Criminal Intent. Criminal Intent is the Law and Order for her.
God bless.
So I have to tell her.
My work. Tell her that I have written for the Grandmaster and for Killmonger in the same episode.
I will definitely let her know. That's funny. But yeah, no, my wife is the crime show lady. Like,
well, she's definitely seen my work then. Yeah, so blah blah blah. And I just sort of kept trying to work. I mean, there's a lot of ups and downs in that kind of a life. I was very lucky. I put out an independent comic book called Prodigal. And Dwayne McDuffie, who I had tried to get in on Justice League, right? They didn't buy anything. And I thought, okay, there's no animation in your future, kid. So me and my boy, my partner, my best friend, made this book called Prodigal. And out of that book, we got a deal at Dark Horse and some other stuff. And Dwayne had read it, and he shouts me out at San Diego Con. I've told the story a million times. Jeff Thorne turned around, and this giant ass Dwayne McDuffie striding towards me with purpose. And I'm like, yes, sir, Mr. McDuffie, what can I do for you, sir? He's like, hey, I read your comic. It's funny as hell. You're funny. I'm like, I'm not funny. I'm witty. He's like, shut up. I'm talking. He didn't say that. He's not like that. Right. But it was like that. And he's like, so have you ever thought about writing animation? And I said, yeah, but you guys kept rejecting my pitches. So I gave that thought up. And he's like, you're stupid. Come pitch Ben 10. You got 2 weeks to come up with some good stuff. So I pitched them a bunch of stuff, and the network liked a couple of the things, and I got to start writing animation. And I kept writing animation whenever I was on a break from writing a TV live action show. Instantly, if I had a chance to write an animated project, I would, because in between hiatus, between 2 seasons, either your show can get canceled, or maybe you don't get asked back to the same show. Maybe they don't want you anymore, right? Like, we're just not asking you back, is what they say, right? Not fired. We're just not asking you back.
Just not asking you back.
You know, your services are no longer required for the rest of your life. But for me, I was like, I would watch my writer friends, and they would panic because sometimes those hiatus periods would extend longer than their bank accounts, and then they would be struggling. They got to find work, and if you're a writer and there's no writing work to get, what are you doing? Unemployment, I guess. But if you live in a giant house or something, unemployment ain't going to cut it, right? So I was like, I don't want to live any of that life. I've already been broke for 5 years. Or 3 years. 3 years. That was terrible. Jeff's never doing that again. Right. I'll be grinding for the rest of my life. So I found this alternative career writing animation. So my live action friends were like, what are you doing those cartoons for? And I'm like, remember when you were broke and asking people for loans? Guess what I'll never be doing? Guess what I'll never be doing? Right. And so I did that for about 10 years. And then they, off and on, that was the way of my pattern. Live action show, animated show, live action show, animated show. You can write a lot more animation
Hmm.
in the same period of time as it takes to like do 2 episodes of a live action show. I wrote something like 8, some crazy
Mm.
number of animated shows. Animation writing is sort of, if people are currently yelling about how bad the pay in comics is.
Hmm.
Um, in between that level of pay and writing for a live action TV show, animation writing is not paid well. You
Gotcha.
don't get residuals. You get paid basically. I think the upper level is something like $7,000 per script or something like that. So if you only wrote 2 that year, you made 14K that year as a writer, and that
Wow.
is not a career, right? That's
Mhm.
upper, right? That's
Wow.
like well, a little bit lower than upper, but that's in the middle range of like I'm doing well, right?
Gotcha.
7,500, 7,000, something like that. So um, not a lot of there's not a lot of upward mobility, and everybody's constantly hustling, and it's just no fun.
Mm.
But if you write enough of it, if your hustle is good, you wrote 10,
Yeah.
that's 70K. You wrote
Yeah.
8, right? That's 50K.
Right.
That's a living, but it's a hustle. There's
Yeah.
nobody works harder than animation. There's nobody hustles harder than animation writers. Nobody,
Gotcha.
because there's no residual payments.
Mm.
They got to keep working. They're like
Exactly.
sharks.
Awesome.
They got to keep eating.
Right.
So, um, so that was that, and then it just kept. I just go where the ability to write for money lets me go, and
That
so
makes sense.
that's what it's been. And I like writing adventure fiction, so
Mm.
that's where I'm at. Um,
Gotcha.
and that's, I guess that brings us sort of up to date.
Yeah. So this is the part where perhaps a better interviewer would draw a straight line from Dwayne McDuffie to your current work on Blood Syndicate. But
Ha!
but then I'd be skipping
Uh
this
oh.
entire year that you just spent on Green Lantern and that I read.
Oh, God bless you.
So I've got to ask, like, just, I mean, I've heard you've talked about kind of how you ended up writing
Yeah.
Green Lantern. It started as a John Stewart idea for a miniseries,
Hmm.
which John Stewart needed another miniseries. The only one you can get right now is Mosaic, if you can get it. I had the opportunity to buy the entire Volume 3 Green Lantern run for
Okay.
$500, and I didn't
Jesus.
do it because it was $500.
Yeah, that's a lot. Holy crap.
The only reason I wanted it was because they also included Green Lantern Mosaic, which I have not found anywhere
Well,
else.
the writer, Gerard Jones, is problematic for the company, right?
Right.
He's a pedophile. He's currently in prison for that.
Mm.
Um, at the time, I don't even know if he was actively a pedophile. Certainly, nobody knew that
Mm.
he was a pedophile, if he was even doing anything in that regard at the time. But that put the black spot on that book,
Yeah.
right? Like the company really could not promote it. Anytime anyone brought it up, they would be like, "Well, the first thing you're going to bring up right after that is, wasn't that written by a pedophile?"
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, "Yeah, but the artist wasn't a pedophile, and the inker wasn't a pedophile, and the editor wasn't a pedophile, and the letterer wasn't a pedophile, the colorist wasn't a pedophile."
Right.
They get royalty payments if you turn that into a trade paperback. Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
sorry. Yeah, you signed a contract with a guy who ended up being a criminal, a horrible criminal, and he would
Yeah.
also get, I guess, those royalty checks too. But why should those other people get nailed? Because years later, he turned out to be a horrible, disgusting human being.
Right.
Like, so, and by the way, as a young black reader of comic books, that made an impression on me.
Mhm.
Mosaic made a huge impression on me, right? And then when they just dropped it and didn't explain or wrap up any of the stuff that they built up in that miniseries,
Mm.
by the way, it wasn't a miniseries; it was meant to be the John Stewart series,
Oh,
right?
really?
Yes, DC shut it off, and it wasn't for sales. If you look at the interviews of was it not what's the name of Cully Hamner was the artist on that,
Mhm.
and they were doing their numbers. They had fallen off from their top numbers, but they had
Mhm.
stabilized at a good mid-range number. And whether the Green Lantern fans want to admit it or not, until Jeff Johns showed up, and since Jeff Johns left, Green Lantern was at best a mid-tier book, at absolute best,
Yeah.
right? So the idea that the spin-off book could hold the numbers it was holding, somebody upper deck at DC was just like, you know what, I'm sick of this book. Get rid of it. And that's how they were told, basically, you're done now. And they were like, wait, what? Why? Doesn't matter, you're done. So so that was it for me. And I was like, and then over the years, John's character just got, I wouldn't say was treated poorly. He just was treated like as a prop. He was there to be used as needed for whatever story the others were in. Right? Yeah. And there's a thing that fans, some certain kinds of fans like. They like the Danny Glover Lethal Weapon relationship. They like the sexually available, bucking authority, can beat up anyone, white guy, and the sort of stoic, settled, not a sexual threat to anyone, nowhere near as good a fighter, black guy. Right? I'm getting too old for this.
Right.
That guy. And then there's the cop who's the police chief who's also black. I'm telling you, you're off the grid here, Riggs. Give me your gun and your shield. You better stay away from this case, damn it. Don't let me catch you anywhere near this case. And then as soon as that door shuts, you know what we're doing? We must stay on this case. Right?
Right.
But so John was the Riggs. John was the Murtaugh for every other Green Lantern's Riggs. And so when I pitched him the short story version of it, it was like I gave them a reason, but he was going to basically leave the Green Lantern Corps and go off and do his own thing. What that turned into was the book you guys got for a whole lot of reasons that have nothing to do with my original pitch. But I wanted to grab those loose threads. They said they've spent a lot of time over the previous 20 odd years saying there was a prophecy about John. John was the first human guardian. He had elevated to the point of a similar power set. All these things, weird things that happened because different writers had control of the character for the intervening years. None of it explained. None of it made a lick of sense, right? Unless you look back at Mosaic and went, oh yeah, right? Maybe it makes sense if you include this.
Right.
But nobody was trying to include that because who cares? Right? Except Jeff cared. So, so that's basically where all of that ascended and all that stuff. That's not language I made up for this particular story. It's just I have a fairly comprehensive knowledge of the history of these freaking characters because I'm a geek. So I was like, all right, well, we're going to tie up all of those threads. And that's what this book turned into.
So what I ended up loving about the book, aside from the fact that the only Green Lantern I ever knew, I'm 31. I'm 31. Yeah. So the only Green Lantern I ever knew was John Stewart because I grew up on cartoons, not comics. But so the John Stewart's the main, or that is hilarious. My boy Kev is watching the stream right now. He just messaged me and says, I'm feeling called out for liking Sergeant Montauk.
I'm not coming for you. I love the Lethal Weapon movies. I'm just saying.
That is great.
There's a lot of that guy in the movies that you see over and over again.
What's funny is when you were talking, I thought of Carl Winslow, and then I thought of the beginning of Beverly Hills Cop.
Exactly. Which, by the way, Beverly Hills Cop was not written for Eddie Murphy. That was supposed to be Sylvester Stallone, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Dude, see, this is the thing. A lot of those movies that we all see as hits in the A-list and they star a black person back in the 80s and 90s, that's because big white stars had already passed like 9 times. And it ended up in the hands of Eddie Murphy. It's like, I'm doing this. So, yeah.
So, my bad. So there's my question. So what I ended up liking about it, because my comfort zone in comics is like street level, like beat up some bad guys. Maybe there's a corrupt politician or two, and then like family stories. I love father-son stories and stuff like that. Right.
Yeah.
So starting this Green Lantern run, we're talking about New God stuff, and we got like just space creatures, and Green Lantern is difficult for me anyway. For all of those reasons.
I'm so sorry for you.
No, it's all good. But what I loved was Joe Mullen's there, who I read Far Sector specifically because, for the same reason I play as Kareem Campbell on Tony Hawk. It's like I like to tell people. Right, so I read Far Sector, enjoyed Far Sector. I find out John Stewart's getting the spotlight. I'm made aware of some controversial tweets.
Whatever.
And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm down for this book. This is great. So I read the whole Green Lantern saga. John Stewart's ascended, or Stewart is ascended.
Sure.
And that part's great. But what kept me in the book was Joe Mullen.
Sure, Joe's great.
Yeah, she's great. Your voice for her is great. I just at one point she says, "If you call me slave one more time, we're gonna have a different conversation." And I was like, "This is the book."
Yeah, we're gonna. This conversation is going all the way left. You keep that up,
Right? And I loved it. I thought it was a very, as someone who is not a big Green Lantern fan, but sees all the chatter, I thought it was a very smart move to ascend John in the way you did. So now he can have his own adventures, and he doesn't have to be second rate to anyone.
That's correct.
If DC decides to pick him up, and
that is the big question, right? Like the thing about writing for these corporations is you're working against a certain amount of inertia, which is, for instance, when I pitched the Lois Lane story, Dan was like, "That's a great story. Sucks for you. We got all these plans for Lois that don't include any of what you just said. So we're never going to do that story." Right? I was like, "Oh, damn it." Right? But the same thing is true for John. A lot of the stuff that I wanted to do for John was basically like, oh, this will probably be somewhat, I don't know. It's hard to describe anything that has to do with comic books as controversial. To me, that seems stupid. It's comic books. Like, just wait 5 minutes. It'll be something different. I don't know why everybody's getting so blown out about stuff. But like, good or bad, wait 5 minutes. It'll be something different. Right? But there are too many damn Green Lanterns. I like superheroes to be unique. They're already, before we had Joe, before we had Kelly, who's not even a Green Lantern, even though people keep trying to make her one. Before we had Simon, we had Simon, we had Jessica Cruz, we had frankly, we had Kyle Rayner. Like, we already had, before the minorities came in. We had too many damn human Green Lanterns to begin with. We had too many when there were three. There should be one. Okay, my idea for the Green Lanterns was basically, and I talked this out with editorial, and they agreed. We need to pare down that force. We need to limit their scope. We need to make them like, when the Silver Surfer shows up on a planet in the Marvel universe, that planet freaks the hell out, right? Even after he's not with Galactus anymore. Why? Because when the Silver Surfer shows up, you are in some trouble, one way or another. Okay, same thing should be with Green Lanterns. If you're on a random planet out in space and you see one Green Lantern show up, they're here to save you from the worst thing ever, or they're here to protect you from something that's coming that was going to destroy you. It should be like the Star of David in your sky with a Green Lantern, right? Instead, what we got is space cops. I think that's crap. They're not cops. They don't work for any government. Nobody elected them. They follow what rules the Guardians tell them. Like, who the hell are the Guardians? I didn't vote for them. They're not kings of anything, right? What is the civilization, and what laws are they enforcing? They're not cops. They're peacekeepers at absolute best. They're like UN peacekeepers, right? Bad situation, send in a team. But what if it's the Klingon Empire or whatever, right? And the way our society works is we expand via conquest. I'll even make it Klingons. Let's say it's an insect species. Insects don't operate like primates do. Okay? If our biological imperative is we're the aliens from Alien and we drop on a planet and murder everything, and that's how we get our new planet, who are you to tell us that our species isn't allowed to operate the way evolution made us? Oh, you don't like it because these people look like human beings? Well, they were in our way and we get to live too. Right. So all of that stuff to me is problematic as a science fiction writer. So limit the scope, get rid of a bunch of these lanterns, pare it down as far as you can within the context of this story and within plausibility. Obviously, Hal Jordan ain't going no place. Too much money has been invested in advertising Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan is the least likely to die character in DC Comics, from my point of view. Right? Him and Superman, Batman, Barry Allen, once they brought Barry back, those people ain't going no place. So everybody was whining and worried about that. Stupid. None of that was ever going to happen. But yeah, you could take John out of the mix. They did take Guy Gardner out of the mix for at least a couple of years when he was Guy Gardner Warrior. He
Right.
wasn't a Green Lantern for a while. He had a
Mhm.
completely other power set, and his book was pretty good, right? So why not give John that same shot, right?
Mhm.
So that's what I came in with. Simon, they never treated Simon Baz right once he was created. They just have never known what to do with him. I had an idea for what to do with him. So he's not a Green Lantern anymore.
Mhm.
Kelly, everybody was whining about the Teen Lantern. I didn't like the Teen Lantern concept either. Guess who's
Mhm.
not a lantern of any kind right now at the end of the book? She's not a
Right.
Teen Lantern. She's not even awake, and there's no
Right.
book. Okay, so a lot of the crap that people were like getting mad about was because um, that dude who runs that one website tried to do to me what he did to Dwayne McDuffie many years ago, which is
Mhm.
he tried to get me fired in advance. He tried to tank my book in advance, and he owes for that. But Dwayne got blindsided. I had the luxury of seeing what had been done to Dwayne. So
Mhm.
I got out in front of that and said, no, folks, here's what's going to happen in the book. And everything I said was going to happen in the book is exactly what happened in the book. So it was difficult. All you had left after that was, I don't like this guy's writing, which is fair. If you don't like the story I'm telling, cool. Like, that's the life I signed up for. Some people aren't going to like the stories I tell. Okay.
Right.
Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel mad about that. Like, you're allowed to not like my stories. I'm not mad at you. I'm not
Mhm.
drafting you. I'm not making you read the book.
Right.
But yeah, so the idea was to kind of give John his own space, try to give him his own mission, give him a different set of rules to play with and different obstacles to get around. Um, Obviously, creating a godlike power set is problematic, but like I always say to people, what do I look like? This is a story. Okay. If you thought for an instant you were going to elevate John up to the level where he could jump across the galaxy on a whim and restart planets and all kinds of crazy stuff, and that's what the book was going to be about, that is a limitation in your imagination. Of course, no one can stay like that. That's like
Right.
making a book about the Phoenix.
Right.
Who's reading a book about Phoenix just phoenixing around the galaxy? Like, no one can beat her. No one can stop her. No one can
Right.
even reason with her. That's like a 2-page book.
Mhm.
Oh, damn, Phoenix is here. What does she want to do? Anything she wants. Okay.
Right.
Who's writing that book? Not me. So, um, yeah, so we did our 12 issues. It's not done. I know people think it's over. Pardon me. Um, I don't know that that book is canceled. All they have done is not solicit
Yeah. I
it.
mean, it does say that Jon Stewart and the Emerald Knights will return.
Yeah, that
Uh,
editorial certainly did not flag that as a lie. So, I mean, we'll see. Say
I'm
this still
excited about. You know what? I still want more Jessica Cruz. I thought
Yeah, man.
Jessica Cruz becoming a Yellow Lantern was very interesting.
I
That was
agree.
some, that was among my favorite parts of the
That's
book.
not me. Ryan Cady
Right,
did that in the Future State book.
right, and then
That was
the
great.
annual.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want
Yeah.
to see that explored more. Um, but I mean, I do like that. Again, John's powered up, and John's got his own place to play. I
Mm-hmm.
like that Joe is with the rest of the Lanterns,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that everybody else sees like how dope Joe is.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's I'm not a sci-fi person
Mm-hmm.
because I got 2 kids and no time to think of galaxies and species. Like it's so rough for me, but I would definitely continue that series. And now is the part where the more experienced journalist finds a way to bring it back to
Uh-oh.
what you're doing right now,
Okay.
which is 2 issues in. I can say this is officially my favorite book on shelves right now,
Wow. Thank you. Wow.
and that is Blood Syndicate.
Yeah, baby.
So, Blood Syndicate was my favorite of the original Milestone titles
Mm-hmm.
because it was just so different from anything.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite character in the original Blood Syndicate, well, before he died, was Tech Nine, and after that was Wise Son. So
Sure.
far, they're both still alive, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But man, so And Bunkmaster B, who would read the Phoenix book as a backup feature.
He's crazy. He's out the damn mind. He's crazy. That's the most boring book you've ever read in your
And I struggle with backup stories too,
life.
because I'm like, I paid for this book, and now
What's
you
this
just gave
book?
me like half of this other book,
Yeah.
and I don't, just let me pay $1 less, and then make
I,
that other book the book, so I could
yeah,
just pay for that whole book.
they changed their distribution model of how they publish the material. They changed
Mm-hmm.
it while I've been there for the Infinite Frontier phase.
Mm-hmm.
And but if you look at what the number of pages, like if you went by page count, the number of forget what the actual books are. The
Right.
number of books that come out has not changed. It's just the way they're packaging the books together has changed.
Yeah.
So I don't know that was a smart play, but that's not part of my job description to worry about that. So
Right. Because it's not like they're spending less money putting it in a different title.
right, I don't know. I don't
I
know
don't
whose genius idea that was. I don't know who's got $7 to spend on any comic book, frankly.
Right.
But
Well,
whatever.
when I've got my money, I put it where I can put it. Right. And so
Yeah.
I started collecting Milestone, thinking that it was a relic of the '90s and that it would never come back,
Me too.
because there were all these reboot rumors that never got off the ground, and there were lawsuits and all these things. And now here we are with just a wealth of Milestone. Now, I thought this as someone who just learned about this stuff 3 years ago. What did you think when you heard that Milestone was coming back? Like, for real?
Well,
Like, you got a call to be on a book.
well, okay. I told this once before. I think this. Let me try to do the short version.
Okay.
I told Wayne many times, please don't take your books. Don't take these characters. Don't let these have these characters. There's a lot of reasons for that, but the bottom line was just creatively. Once you folded Wildstorm into the main DCU, or folded Milestone into the DCU, all of those characters stopped being, in any way, they have no chance of ever becoming iconic. Not to use that word, because the company has to keep making sure that Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, the Flash, Green Lantern, those characters that they've invested 70 odd years in, that they're always going to be the pinnacle. So you've automatically made the best that Icon in those crew could ever be, the second banana. That's the best. And I feel like those characters deserve better. Dwayne assured me I will be here. Don't worry about it. Part of the deal is I get to make sure that does not happen. And I was like, well, it's you, cool. Like, not like he needs my freaking approval. but I voiced that opinion many times very strongly. He's like, you take it seriously. And I was like, I don't think you understand, because you created it, what the impact on those of us out here who received that was. And what I don't want to see is the thing that caused you to make Milestone in the first place, eat Milestone and destroy it. I would rather have it be a part of my beautiful past than have it turn into crap in the present day. Right? And he's like, I feel you. No worries, I'll be there. And then he died. And DC screwed it up. Their version of Milestone 2.0 was god awful. They brought in some of the original creators to do that, and then they sat them with people who thought they knew better how to do it. None of them did. Okay, none of them knew how to do it, and they made crap versions of something just as I predicted. They did exactly what I predicted. And I thought, that's it. You're done. That's it. That was the shot. So, yeah, all the backstage stuff, which I know a great deal, is none of my business, and I'm not going to talk about, but the lawsuit stuff and all that kind of crap, that does not settle. And we're getting Milestone returns. And very wisely, they put it on its own planet. It's not part of the main DCU. It's on one of the alternate Earths. That's enough for Jeff.
Right.
And they've done different spins to modernize it. Some people like, some people don't. But it ain't 1993, kids. So if you thought it was just going to be a continuation of 1993 nonsense, the world has moved on, and these books have to compete in the real world now. So buckle up. And yeah, I got a call. And the reason was I woofed for over a decade. If they ever bring back the Blood Syndicate and they don't call Jeff, somebody's going to be on the news. Because the only person who they can call over me is Ivan Velez Jr., who created the Blood Syndicate. If I see that name in the book and it's not mine, it better be Ivan Velez Jr. because otherwise somebody's going to the hospital and somebody's going to jail, and we don't know which is going to be there. Okay. Okay. So Reggie basically emailed me and says, "Okay, Mr. Big Talk, you talk a lot of smack. You got a pitch?" I was like, "Well, you thought I was just kidding? Yeah, I got a pitch. Here's my pitch." And he was like, "Let me get Dennis in here." Like, let me put Dennis in on this. And tell him that. I told them. They were like, "Oh, okay, yes, do that. Do all that nonsense." So that's what you guys are getting, and it's going to be a trip. It's going to be a trip.
That is fly. So I'm getting a bit of a crackle from you, so I'm just going to make my question longer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all good. So my favorite character in the original Blood Syndicate was Wise Son, mostly because I have family members who converted to Islam. And I love that Wise Son was basically Black nationalist, Nation of Islam, 5%er. Like, that's Wise Son in the OG series, right? We get to issue 2 of Blood Syndicate, which, first of all, we're getting like the slow pan intro to each member, which I love, because in OG Blood Syndicate, you just jump straight into the action. Same with Static, same with all of them, actually. It's just this world exists, and here's how it's working, right? And so then you got so you got ride along characters like the reporter and all that, right?
Yeah.
But here, where we know this book is going to be in these 6-issue arcs, like, one thing I also loved was just how issue 2 just started immediately after issue 1. Like, the first page of issue 2, the first panel says Dakota Transit Authority 1 hour earlier. 1 hour earlier from what? From issue 1. I love that. But anyway, so we get a glimpse into Wise Son, and first of all, he's got baby mama problems, right? He's got his ultra conservative Christian dad, who's also just standard Black dad. Like, I run my house, and you're not about to, like, tell me nothing about nothing in my house, right? And I suddenly related to Wise Son all the more. It was just great. It was just great. And I just love that this man went all the way to Iraq, comes back, and is thrust right back into this world. Like, he starts the issue like, "Yeah, see, I changed so much. Like, I'm gonna tell everybody how much I changed." And you end the issue like, "Oh, well, things are still the same."
Nope. Nobody cares about any of that. The way to change is to never come back here. If you stayed away, maybe you had a shot. But your dumbass came back here. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's fun. But you're right. The original version had a lot of the things it had to do in the 90s, right? One of the things that people forget about this was the Priest and the Black Panther as well. You needed a white character to make it okay. Because the Blood Syndicate was the most off-the-chain book in Milestone stable. It was focused on the street gang. None of them were superheroes. They were killing people. They were playing. They were not going to crack out. Flashback was a pick to crack. They were having sex with people, and half of them were queer. And tough. Deal with it, right? So they had to drop you in and roll because they were trying to get people Image and Vertigo, and like, you know, they had to go. So, but now it's 30 years later, and a lot of that stuff is not new to anyone. So you got to come up with a different angle, and you don't need the white character to hold everybody's hand. You go, it's okay, white people. You can come to Paris Island fictionally. You're not going to get shot by fictional bullets that will fly out of the comic book, right? It's okay. See this white. You don't need her. Just like you didn't need Ross. If you started, Chris Priest was doing the Black Panther right now. Who is the Black Panther? He doesn't need Elliot Ross. He doesn't need to do that. But he did at the time, or there would have been a problem. There would have been a whole bunch of people jumping down Marvel's throat about whatever. As we see from the internet, even when you do try to make things okay, people still jump on for that. So, by the way, almost everybody who showed up in the original Blood Syndicate is going to make an appearance in the current Blood Syndicate. It's just we're going to do a little remix on some of them. So, so even that reporter may show up. Oh, go.
Okay. So speaking of, pretty sure we saw Aquamaria in issue 2.
Yeah, I'm not spoiling anything. She's on the cover. I've already shown the cover of like one of the later incidents.
Or
So yeah, that's Aquaman.
Fly.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Also, in the original, you're reading that right now. She didn't talk much and didn't really get to do very much in the original Blood Syndicate. She's a player in this one, so
okay,
you can expect her to stick around for a minute. Yeah,
that's
Rhea don't play. Don't mess with my girl. She does not play. So anyway, so there's some stylistic changes, but yeah, you need to meet these people as people. Hannibal is not a nice guy. He was a hard rock before he left. He's a hard rock now. He has problems with queer people, as we've seen. Even one who's supposed to be his friend, he is not always the best with.
Right.
That's not going anywhere for a minute. Fade was in the closet in the first run. He's absolutely not now. Because there's no need for Ivan Velez was dealing with the issues of the day, and he was grappling with stuff in that book, courageously, I thought, and unflinchingly in a way. Like he did not take any, as we used to say, he didn't take any shorts. He was like, "Here's where we're at. Let's go. As far as I will push this as far as the limit will let me push," is what that book was, and that's why we all appreciated it. It was also my favorite until Shadow Cabinet showed up, and then they would go back and forth which one was my favorite book. But to do that now, you have to deal with different issues, and you have to approach them in a different way. So there's some stuff that's going to happen in this book that I guarantee you, some of the usual suspects who are mad at me about what they think I was trying to do with Joss Stewart and Green Lantern, which I was not. They're going to get mad in a couple of these issues. That contingent. I'm not trying to do that. Right. But to be authentic is to piss off certain people. Yeah. That's just the way it is. And you have to accept that and assume it and not worry about it and just tell the story you came to tell. So
yeah, Rick Rubin once said, "The best art divides the audience."
And I find that's probably true. Yeah, right. You love it or you hate it. You don't want indifference, right? Indifference is death.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
So we're doing a bunch of we're doing a bunch of little remixy stuff, but we're also being allowed to show you these people as people in a way, because these are limited runs. Like the original Blood Syndicate moved really fast. Like by our standards today, that was once a month, but like they chocked so much stuff into those pages. So by the time Tech died, like I was like, how are you so mad at Tech dying? He's only been around for 5 minutes, but they crammed in so much stuff that by the time you checked out, you're like, oh damn, So if I kill any of the characters, I want you to live with them before they die. I want you to feel it. So is Tech destined to definitely die? Nope. Nobody's destined to do anything. But on the other side of that, these people are not superheroes. I've been saying this and I like it. I wish I had thought of it before. Paris Island rules, they are not trying to put the Joker in jail.
Right.
When we solve a problem on Paris Island, we never have that problem again.
Right.
That's the good guys say that.
Yeah.
So there's literally going to be a line where they say later on in the book, so there's Paris Island rules, right? And everybody knows what the hell that means. Okay.
That's dope.
Okay, these are not the Avengers. These are not the X-Men. They're not trying to be any of that.
Right.
Okay. They're not trying to take you to jail. You saw what Tech did in the issue 1. He did not try to corral that dude. He shot at innocent people and he lit that car up. His first response was death. He went from 0 to 80. Right. Right. And then the response from the dude was, "Oh, you think you got something? Oh, no. I got way more than you think." Right.
Right.
That's Paris Island right there.
Yeah.
That moment is Paris Island.
I get whatever. I'm spoiling Blood Syndicate because I'm talking to Jeff Thorne. Holocaust just like blowing up the whole gang meeting is just great. Holocaust is it's great. It's so.
He named himself Holocaust.
Right.
Like the man calls himself Holocaust. He is an awful human being. He is like the worst person ever.
Right. Right. I just oh snap. I need to respond to this email. So I just
That's true, Tim.
bought,
That's actually true. 0 to 100.
right. I bought two original art pages from Blood Syndicate #1. The
Whoa.
first the first is when Tech is, comes back on Paris Island. It's being shown around by Fade, and they're like just he's sitting and sinking in this graffiti image of Icon,
Yeah.
like just that image of him just taking it in. I love that.
Yeah.
And then I bought the double page spread where
Rocket.
Icon or Rocket, excuse me, where Rocket just smashes up some guys and tips and has some like Matrix scene stopping some bullets, like just great. So I just got the email and I need to go ahead and send in this payment because that's coming. I'm excited about that.
I mean, I don't have any of the original art from any of these books, and some of these people are drawing some amazing crap.
Right.
And I'm just like through with myself. Damn it.
Well, I'll send you the thing because Crisscross is all digital now, but his inker,
Juan Castro.
Juan Castro. Juan Castro is inking traditionally, and so I'm buying the inks over Blue Line.
Nice.
But I'm very excited to have that because again, there's a time where I thought this stuff was not coming back.
Me too. I'm amazed that this is happening. Reggie and Dennis are doing. I wouldn't say they're letting me do anything I want because they've got to act as good editors will do. Nope, not doing that. But on the whole, I felt the most free on this book that I've had in the name of Holocaust. You guys are not ready for this guy. You're just not ready for him. Nobody's ready for Holocaust. I promise you that. Like everything you read about Holocaust so far is like the test run of Holocaust. Holocaust ain't playing, Oh, God. When you see issue 3, if you thought issue 2 was raw Holocaust, just you wait.
This is great. I'm waiting for Juan to post the art pages from issue 2 because I know which one I want from that one. But yeah, these are privileges that I get for being a moderator in the Milestone fan group on Facebook.
Nice.
So when people post stuff, I see it. Often I have to approve it, and so sometimes I get first dibs.
Membership has perks.
Right. This is fun. So Bunkmaster B just recently read the Milestone Compendium. So his favorite of the original was Blood Syndicate as well. So Brickhouse's intro with Wise Son was what really set up that series for me.
Okay, Brick's going to show up. Basically, I'm not going to say everybody's going to show up because some of them are surprises even to me. There are characters that I didn't think I was going to be able to make work in this first 6 issues, but some of them are going to show up that I didn't think were going to show up. Brick's definitely going to be there. She has to be. Masquerade's definitely going to show up because he has to be. Third Rail's going to show up for sure. We already met Aqua Maria. So most of the Blood Syndicate, who's not going to be here for sure, DMZ, is definitely not going to be in this first 6 issues.
Okay.
Concept behind him is way too big. And I just didn't feel like if this was an ongoing, I might have put in like 1 page or 1 panel where he's sort of watching events or something like that. But it's only 6 issues, so it's too bad because he's great. But his power set is so huge that it's like, Dog. People are like, are you going to use Dog? And I'm like, Dog is in the Blood Syndicate. Dog is in the Blood Syndicate, y'all. Like, this is called the Blood Syndicate. like, don't worry. Eventually, people are going to show up. They're just not going to necessarily arrive in the way you expect.
Gotcha.
So yeah. And I'm doing messy things with their power sets too. Like, I always ask the question, Joey from was it Comics Cube? He's like, you always ask this question: if this is true, then why isn't this true?
Right.
Right. So let's just say that Fade, and I'm sure Ivan did not do this accidentally and probably planned to do something with it, but both of their powers relate to time, the
Mm,
manipulation of time, even though it doesn't look like Fades do that, right?
mm,
Currently, and her flashback ability, obviously.
yeah,
So I found it interesting that brother and sister got similar, or what is it, complementary power sets.
right.
Never really explored in the original run. Don't know what I'm going to do with it now, but I'm going to do something with it. I just don't know what that something is yet.
Right.
Yeah, so things like that. Cross is going buck wild with the designs on this thing. I have my
Hmm.
little notations. Like, here's what I was thinking about for character X, and then he'll throw out the design. I do not censor any of that. He's one of the originals. If he wants to make a character look a particular way, I don't feel I'm empowered to tell him not to do that.
Right.
So, like, who am I to say that? but um, but there's going to be some new characters. We're definitely introducing a new character in issue 3. Um, um, and we've already introduced Ligero and Rebar. These are not rando names.
Mm,
Rebar is not just a big dude who watches the door. Like, he's somebody you need to pay attention to. Ligero is somebody you need to pay attention to. These are not, and there's a couple more characters that have come up that did not exist in the original. There are characters I wanted that are already being used by Static, so I don't want to mess that up.
mm,
Uh, I'm not going to try and. There's already enough crossover, so.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm having a good time. I wish it was more than 6 issues. I hope they let me come back for a second season if it gets a second season.
I really hope
So,
it gets a second season.
well, the end of this season definitely sets up some craziness. So, um, let me put it like this: whoever gets to come in the second season is going to have a ball,
Mm,
because the end of this season is going to be out there, man.
word.
Like, wow.
I'm
Um,
I'm excited. I mean, like I said, we're 2 issues in,
Ryan, thank you very much.
and I love. Yes, okay, yes. Ryan says Green Lantern has been great. So definitely, I've been reading you guys' comments, um, but I haven't been highlighting as much as I normally do because I tend to go on tangents. Jeffrey tends to
So
go on
does Jeff.
tangents. So this will be the tangent show.
Okay.
Uh, Tim is hyped for season 2 of Blood Syndicate if it ever comes. But even if it doesn't, you know,
Well, I
I'm
will tell you what I would have done if I don't get if it doesn't happen.
okay.
Um, buy that book, y'all. That's how these things happen. Like, it's just pretty
Listen,
simple.
I'm doing my part. So I buy every cover. Is how is
You're a
how
madman. I've seen your stupid stream. I know you buy every cover. You're out of control.
I have to do it just because. Like, I mean, the way I see it, I very well may be the only one at my LCS buying this book. So I'm buying all of them, right? I know I'm not the only one, but
I
still,
hope not.
yeah. Uh,
Well,
but like
it is what it is.
by issue 6 of Hardware,
Mhm.
my LCS wasn't getting variants because it was like, it just it tapered down. So it's like, I
Right,
buy
right.
whatever I can get while it's available. Kev's got a question, says, are they publishing hardcovers? Are the other season ones besides Static? Hardware
That I
and
can't answer.
Icon are both in solicits already.
There you
Um,
go.
one of them is out in October, and I don't think its Icon is out in October. I don't think Hardware is coming until 2023. That series just wrapped.
Right.
Um, but yeah, those both have hardcovers solicited. There was a tease, or not a tease. Someone just straight up leaked a Photoshop image of
Okay.
a teaser for Icon versus Hardware.
Oh, people have been talking about that. I don't know anything about that. I
Yeah,
saw that on my Twitter feed, and I was like, okay,
right,
that's
like
not my book.
right. So I'm excited about it. I mean, the ending of season 1 of Hardware definitely sets up something like that.
Yeah, but he didn't look like he was mad at Icon at the end of that. He just looked like,
Right.
I appreciate it.
Exactly. I didn't think, like, if they go Icon versus Hardware, it's very Batman versus Superman, in that Batman just jumped to the wildest conclusion ever.
That's true.
And
Well,
was like,
Curtis,
something about it.
Curtis is not a very he is kind of a zero chill type of dude.
Yeah.
who knows what we will come up with? But
That's true. But
I would hope that they would. I would hope they would do something that you don't expect. Like
right,
you
right.
know,
Because I mean, just the way both series are written, Curtis. It doesn't make sense that Curtis would be against Icon.
yeah.
Like,
I'm interested to see. I'm assuming it'd be Brandon and Reggie, I guess, writing together.
right.
So, or I don't know, maybe one of them will just do it. But
Mhm.
the way Brandon is set up, Curtis, I don't know. Like
Mm.
I would think the only way it would have to work to me would be like a sort of a Civil War type situation, like Marvel Civil War, where they
Uh,
have a difference of opinion about a third thing,
got you.
rather than you're bad. Like the Batman in that. I mean, okay. First of all, full disclosure, I hate everything to do with Snyder and the DC universe.
Mm.
Okay, everything. No, go home. I hate it. I don't want to hear about it. Sorry about it, folks. No,
Right.
I'm all note on that. But the shot of Bruce Wayne looking up in the sky after the wreck of Metropolis and
Right.
seeing Superman fly over, yeah, I can see why that would piss Bruce off a little bit.
Yeah.
So if they give Icon an event like that, which would
Mm.
legitimately make hardware a little irritated,
Mm.
sure,
Yeah.
but that hasn't happened in the books yet, so I don't know what he'd have that be that mad about. So
Got you.
I don't know. I don't know.
So Tim says that teaser is actually in the end of the Milestone in History special, which just came out this week. And as soon
Okay.
as I finish changing my Spark Plus, I'm going to drive to the comic shop and buy
Oh,
it.
I need to get that.
It's
Okay.
sitting in my box. That's the one with that Doug Braithwaite variant that they have been
Okay.
teasing images of forever. That I don't understand why it's not a poster, but whatever. um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm excited about that. That was also supposed to come out like 4 months ago, and people are still calling it a Black History Month special. Which
Well, God bless.
I mean, hey,
I mean, think about it like this: in 5 years, no one will remember that it was a month late or whatever, 4 months
right?
late. They will think it was a Black History Month special. So
That's true. That's
you know,
true. So I'm just excited that a book like that exists in the same universe where Miles Morales is just vandalized all of Asgard. So
look, I mean, I think I try to keep stressing this when I do these interviews.
mhm,
Um, there's a way to describe all of that stuff, which sets us all up in these tribes that go after each other. And then there's a way to criticize it that is, wah, 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 y'all fell down on the job this time. You
right.
know, I know you're trying to do your best, but this time was a fail. Maybe go back to the lab and think about yourselves. You know,
Hmm.
um, I try to give these people the benefit of the doubt. I think that they're all basically decent people, but I don't want to have Milestone be set up as like, no, see, like this, fool, do it like this. Like
Right.
that is not the vibe. At least
Yeah.
not for me. And I'm probably writing the rawest of the books right now,
Hmm.
right? But my vibe is not to show you how it's done, and I'm not trying to use my book or any of these Milestone books to criticize how they did it. I just think that was a fail. I just
Yeah.
think as a fan, that book was a fail. And you guys, it doesn't have to be a black writer. There are plenty of writers who know how to do this. My favorite Black Panther writer after Priest, it's Priest, Jason Aaron, then Reggie,
Mm.
right? Because Jason Aaron wrote "See Wakanda and Die," and that is probably the best small arc of that hero's entire existence.
Mm.
And Jason Aaron ain't nobody's black dude. So I'm good with people being able to write first, but that was a fail. That issue is a fail. It's a fail.
Right.
So
That's facts. So we talked about Blood Syndicate. We talked about pretty much everything that I
I
wanted to
think
talk
everything.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, we got in the heat of the night. We
Yeah.
talked
Don't
about
know why we did that.
no that
That was for your grandmother.
that, that was just to justify the 2 days I spent binging the series.
Look, that was on you, man. Nobody asked you to do that. Nobody told you to do that.
That's true. That's true. That's true. At least I enjoyed it.
God bless you. God bless you.
But yeah, no, my grandmother, my great aunt Mary loved In the Heat of the Night. But that intro was always our cue to like go to the other room to watch cartoons.
And
So
shut up, right?
right,
Yeah.
right.
Listen, there are so many disappointed people that I got fat. I get email. That's the kind of fan mail I get. You used to
Wow,
be so cute. I had such a big crush on you. What happened? Like that's the
that's
kind of fan mail I get.
that's terrible.
It's
So
terrible. It's terrible. It's truly terrible.
yeah. So I did read Mosaic. I
Okay,
enjoyed again, sci-fi is not my bag. So
sure.
it took me a second to like get the whole Inhuman vibe. But
Right.
what I appreciated or enjoy, and I've read 7.5 issues. I have not finished the conclusion. Um,
Okay.
but what I love about it was that even up through issue 7.5, right? We're in
Mhm.
the beginning of issue 8, and this man having embodied all these different people, like some
Uh-huh.
3 dozen people at this point,
Mhm.
is still just as self-centered,
He's a
right?
jerk.
Like to be able to literally walk in another person's shoes and
Hmm.
still come out of that selfish is an
Yep.
accomplishment, and that's great.
God
So
bless Morris. God bless Morris.
I'm curious to see if he's redeemed himself by the end of issue 8. Either way, it's a great read.
You know
Um,
what? Shoot me a quick DM about that because I'm interested to see what you think.
okay,
That run got messed with a lot because of big things going on at Marvel at the time,
got you.
and the issues. I think I haven't looked at it in a minute, but the issue where he actually joins up with the Inhumans.
Hmm.
Um, Basically, everything after he deals with his father, the
Right.
next 2 issues, that was because they're like, you have to do something with this big event. And I was like,
Mm,
but we set the book up that it wasn't going to be connected to that event at all. Yeah, but it's connected now. So, we're using the character. And I'm like, yeah,
so that's
sorry, y'all
why
are
the
using
X-Men
them.
just like jump in for no reason at all.
Well, that happened in the Civil War. Like that event occurred.
Got you.
And I was like, listen, set this guy up. As you just said, he is very self centered and selfish. So his
Mm,
first question is not what's the right thing to do, is what's in it for me.
right.
That's how does this help Morris? That's
Hmm.
it. Right. So he literally tells Spider Man that with great power comes great responsibility is
Right.
corny.
Right.
That's corny. Right.
Like,
I don't know who
what the-
told you that, but that's some BS, baby.
right.
um,
That's
but
great.
um, but I had to use those 2 issues because the writers on that big event didn't care about what Mosaic's powers and what was going on with him actually were. They took some sort of basic description of what they thought his power set was, and they bent it to what they wanted it to be without checking with me or talking to me or asking me a single thing. So when I
Mm,
read the books that were coming out, I was like, well, no, his powers don't work like that. And one of the editors was like, but could they though? And I'm like, no, his powers specifically do not work like that.
mm,
Superman is not immune to magic. Yeah, but he needs to be in this story. I'm very sorry for you. He
mm,
isn't. So figure some shit out. Pardon me.
right. You're good.
But but so I had to in it's not the main book, but it's the title book for the character. I had to explain why all these ridiculous inconsistencies
Mm,
were not inconsistent, right?
got
So
you.
I could create a situation where all the screw ups with his power, why this happened, why he was behaving oddly from what if you were reading the book and then you went and read the event, you're like, that's not how Mo acts. Morris
Mm,
doesn't do any of that, right? Like he does
right.
none of that, right?
Hmm.
And they're like, well, he's an Inhuman. I'm like, yeah, and I have half my family from the Caribbean, but I'm not taking any sides on whatever the hell's going on in Barbados.
Right.
Like, I don't
Yeah.
know what that is.
Right.
so, I mean, nothing against Barbados. I'd love to have more of my heritage in that regard because it's
Mm,
gorgeous down there. But I don't know.
yeah.
So I would not be able to take a side. And so they had him just doing stuff because he's an Inhuman, and I was like, that's. I don't remember which writers they were. Thank God, I suppose. But
Mm,
that's disrespect to the writer of the
yeah.
other material. I always check. I check with Bendis. I check with Taylor. I didn't even end up using John Kent in the Green Lantern book, but I
Mm,
definitely checked with the people who were driving their books
yeah.
to see, look, what is your plan for this group? Is there going to be a space if I want to use John? Can I use him? You
Mm,
know, blah blah blah. Well in advance, so there'd be no toe stepping, where the books would seem to line up thematically, if nothing else, right? All of that crap. They didn't do any of that with me, so I had to play catch up for 2 issues for the people who were faithfully reading the book, the 6,000 people that were reading the book at the end. I had to tell them, sorry, folks, here's why he was acting out of character.
Gotcha.
You know? And so those 2 issues to me are substandard because it was really more a sort of an editorial job than a writing job.
Gotcha. What's funny is those 2 issues to me were substandard because Kari wasn't on them. But
well, there's that too. But I don't want to knock the artist because
that's true. That's true. It's not no knock. I just enjoyed it's so hard to to appreciate one artist without it coming off as a slight to another.
Look, these people are great artists in their own right. Right.
Yeah.
Kari and Emilio co-created Mosaic in the sense that the way you see and understand Mosaic is entirely them. Entirely. Like, I didn't have anything to do with that design. I told you I wanted it to be a body horror story. He wasn't even going to have a human-looking shape for like 4 issues, right? And Kari and Emilio came up with what we think of as Mosaic, and they own that. They own that together, and they get props for that. So you're right. It's kind of like if you are the first person to follow Jack Kirby on the Fantastic Four. Yeah, but this ain't Kirby. Like, it's good, Mr. Neil Adams, but I mean, I was expecting Kirby,
right?
You know,
so, absolutely. So Jeff has been very gracious with his time. I only booked an hour and a half. We're at 2 hours.
My wife is mad at both you and me right now.
Oh snap! My bad.
Whatever, it's my fault. We both talk too much.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. So I'm gonna get back to my infant. You're gonna get back to your life. But dude, thank you so much. One for watching the stream. That's how I knew you knew I existed and built up the nerve to be like, hey, come on the show.
Look, you're great. I told you this off camera. I've told a couple of the interviewers the same thing. You're my kind of fan. You're the kind of person who shares the beauty and the wealth and the positivity of all this. And even your criticisms are, it's hard to say a criticism is nice, because that's not exactly it. But there's no sense of you're going for the throat of the people involved.
Right.
It's like, I'm talking about the artwork. So, no, my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. Like, I want more people to be like, I want to be like Mr. Kicks. I want more people to be like Nerdette. I want people to be like Diet Comics Cube. That's my contribution to all this. I want the people lighting candles, they get my attention. Everybody who's trying to make it darker and uglier, they get the foot. So,
well, look, man, I appreciate it. So we got a last shout out to Officer Sweet.
Stop it.
And that's the last time I will reference that TV show.
He dead. He dead. He good and dead. We done killed him. He killed him.
Look, man. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you for helping to bring back Blood Syndicate. I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Tell your grandma he's not dead. He has a nice career. He left Sparta and he went to the big city and he got a career in law enforcement. I'm
absolutely telling my grandmother. Well, look, man. Tim says thanks. Thank you, sir. And to all of you, thank you guys for watching the stream. This was a little bit longer than normal, but you guys got a special treat. Be sure to go to organicpricebooks.com. Use my coupon code. You'll save an extra 14% off everything in their summer sale collection. That does include the Milestone Compendium, which was already marked down to $43. So you got deals on deals on deals. I will see you guys in another episode of The Hangout very soon. Until then, hope you saw something you liked in this one. And if not, that's cool. You can always buy what you like. Just make sure you read what you buy and be nice to others, because kindness makes the world go round.
Thank you.
Peace.
Peace.